See, I have this idea about goals, and it's not the same as how most people think of goals. There's plenty written about goals, spoken about goals. Why do you want to hear what I think about them? Well, this isn't really about the goal setting process. You can find plenty about that. We often think of goals, I want to get this, or I want to be here, or I want to do that. And yeah, that can be useful. Goals are the big thing, right? Goals really, when we think about them, they're outcomes. Jim Rohn talks about them in terms of them being this thing out in the future. And I like to think of being able to throw like a hook out into the future and drag yourself into the future. That's what your goals do. But when it comes to the day-to-day, how useful are goals? We can read on the board, you might write something on your whiteboard or on your mirror that you want to achieve a certain thing. But how useful is it just reading that same thing all the time? Or in my experience anyway, this doesn't seem to be that useful. Our journey towards the things we want is little pieces of time that make up pieces of the day, which make up the week. How useful is it looking at the whiteboard and it says, I want to lose 40 kilos, I want to travel, I want $1 million business. How useful is it just staring at that stuff? I argue it's not useful at all. In fact, the opposite is kind of true, where more people feel guilt and shame from having their goals on the board, because every day that goes past, they feel like they've let themselves down because they aren't that version of themselves yet. They haven't reached that part yet, obtained that thing. Then the guilt starts to come in and I should have done more. And then the shame of I'm not the kind of person I wanted to be. We look at other people and start comparing. And I just don't think any of that is useful to actually creating change. So goals are fun. They're great to set and do them occasionally, a couple times a year. It's fun. But I don't think they're very useful things to work with. Now, Nick Peterson wrote a book about this. He wrote a book called Bumpers. It's a great book. Go find it. But as he mentions in the book, we all kind of have a different version of this. And my version, I don't have to explain what a bumper is. I've always just used the word minimums. Goals versus minimums. Goals are the things up here that you want to hopefully arrive at, but they're not useful to getting you there. Whereas minimums are things that you do every single day or whenever on a regular basis that are the little building blocks towards that goal. By setting my minimums, they keep me in the game. And if I simply stay in the game, as we know, just being in the game is enough to get results. Just being in the game long enough is enough to get results that start to compound. So goals that are missed or feel too far away can often bring guilt and shame and backsliding and stagnation, and a day turns into a week, turns into a month. Next thing, it's 6 months and you haven't stepped on the scale yet and you haven't lost that weight you were hoping to lose, or control that habit that you were struggling with, or achieve that possession that you were looking forward to having. So you feel like a worse version of yourself and you feel like you've let yourself down. Maybe you feel like you've let your kids down or your partner down. Whether it's true or not is irrelevant, but you still feel it. And those feelings go into what motivates you or demotivates you. Okay, just quickly, do you get the weekly newsletter? If you're not getting it yet, pause this video, the link is below. It takes 3 seconds, and from this Saturday, you'll get useful marketing insights to grow a business that you'll actually love. No relentless hustle culture, no cold outreach, no doing anything that doesn't align with who you are. It's my free newsletter. It's called Coach Marketing Sucks. I'm super proud of it. Get it with the link below. Okay, back to the video. So setting your minimums, how do you go about doing that? There was a recent study done to the effects of walking. And how useful is it? How many steps is required? Is it 10,000? The answer is pretty obvious. If you're doing no walking, 1,000 steps is better. It's great, real improvement. If you're doing 1,000 a day as an average, getting to 2 or 3 as an average is better. That's a great improvement. And this continues on all the way up to like 20, 30,000 steps a day. Now the benefits decrease as you get up that high, because other things start to happen, but there's a progression that takes place. So wherever you're at with your particular goal that's up there somewhere, there's probably a handful of things that you know that are going to get you there. There's things that you know if you just did this stuff, it's probably going to get you there. It's really not rocket science. If you're looking at a business goal and you go, I need to be more visible in the marketplace. Okay, great. One way to do that is to have an incredible amount of virality with a piece of content, something that just takes off. That's great. Getting a piece of content to do that is really quite difficult. That's the reality. So what can you do that's going to step by step guarantee that it's going to take you down that path? Well, probably just putting out some content on a regular basis. You just start with that. So if you're not doing anything on a regular basis, start doing content on a regular basis. Should you do video? Should you do words? Should you do pictures? Well, just start with whatever's easiest for you. Start with that. Figure out your minimums from there. So once you've done it for 30 days, then you can look back and you can see the data, you can see what actually happened, and you can be happy and confident with the fact that you've done the work to be consistent. You've done the minimum stuff. You can take that information and improve it for next time, which you probably will. But here's something extra that happens when you focus on just get the minimums done. And that is you find yourself doing extra stuff anyway. You might say, I want to post once a day, every day for 30 days. And then you go back and you count all your posts and you realize, hey, I got 36. How did I get 36? Oh, I must have had more. And then you might also realize you've got a list of ideas that you've built up that you haven't even got to yet, because your whole sort of framework in your mind starts to change because you've got a very simple goal. Just simply do this thing. I'm not saying you to post every day on Instagram. Don't get me wrong. Nor am I saying that you need to change any habits at all. But if there's a goal you've got somewhere, you probably already know a couple of simple, basic things that are on the path to that goal. And if you're not doing those things, what are your minimums? What minimums are you going to choose to incorporate into your days, your weeks, and your months? Goals versus minimums. Focusing daily on the big bad goal leads to perfectionism, leads to shame, leads to guilt, leads to retreat, leads to slowing down, leads to inconsistency, leads to failure. But focusing daily simply on the minimum to do leads to consistency, which leads to growth, which builds the wall slowly to get you where you want to go. All of that to say, that's not saying that you can't catch some upside, because what do you think is going to happen when you create content 30 days in a row? Set a challenge for yourself, for example. You're probably going to get better at making content. And then when you review what you've done, you're probably going to be able to pick the best parts and go, well, I think I might do more of that and that and that. And then the next month you might try again. And before you know it, you're actually really good at this. So dream big, have your big, audacious goals. Have that stuff you really want to do that gets you excited. But don't use it for your daily motivation. It's not useful. Instead, think minimums. Speaking of minimums, the minimum you could do if you've watched this far is, all right, YouTube knows you better than you think you know yourself, and it's suggesting you watch this video here. I hope it's one of mine. See you in the next video.